Well, hello. It is the bedbug guy, a couple minutes early, coming live from the swamp ass capital of the world, Florida. If you know, you know. And tonight I thought I'd go live for a little bit and celebrate 100 subscribers. Oh, watch the cats go nuts. Here we go. Hold on. Before I do that, let me cover that up. Ah, well, for crying out loud. Up. Hey! 100 subscribers. Now, why is such a small amount? A big deal to yours truly. Well, that means with 100 subscribers, there are at least 90 of you that I don't actually know. So, thank you for subscribing. Maybe I'll get 150. So, I thought, well, since there's so many people I do not know who have subscribed to my channel, I should probably just tell you guys a few things about me. And the first big question is hey, why the bedbug guy? What is the deal with that? Well, I'm a licensed pest control operator here in the state of Florida, and I've been doing pest control for about 17 years. And for a great portion of that, I was the bedbug tech. I started off as a bedbug tech, and I did it for several years straight. And they figured out I was good at it, so I did mostly all of it, and that is a lot. And people just never really knew my real name. They just knew I was the bedbug guy. If I showed up, bedbug guy's here, point it out. They would call on the phone, send the bedbug guy. Hell, if somebody else showed up to do the job, they would call and say, hey, that isn't the bedbug guy, send the bedbug guy. When they talk about the bedbug guy, they're referring to me. It's just one of those nicknames that you get, kind of like people named Torch. Just happens. So, now, the deal with me is I have had this, what would be described as an unhealthy obsession with ancient Egypt since I was a small child. I would say since I was about 4. And I remember, I don't know where I was, but I was looking at maybe a National Geographic. This would have been early 80s. And they're showing pictures of King Tut's tomb. I couldn't really read. But in that tomb, there's that big statue of Anubis, and it just clicked. And from then on, I was just, whoa, this is so cool. And then I started to learn how to read, and I was just consuming everything I could. In 3rd grade, I was writing book reports on basic books this thick written by Egyptologists. And of course, a lot of lectures, a lot of boring ass documentaries. Gets me through life. The original career path was to be an Egyptologist, but that didn't quite work out. And I tell you what, if I get 100,000 subscribers, I'll tell you the whole sordid story of how that went down. And I ended up killing bugs for a living. But I continued on. And at some point, I started consuming the alternative history because, as it turns out, there are a lot of legit mysteries in the world and a few unanswered questions. And alternative history books are extraordinarily interesting, and I could read through them and come across ideas and go, you know what? I can buy that. That's pretty good. But one of the problems that I have is that nobody in my life cares. I can't talk to them about anything. No friends, no nothing that really care. Family, not into it. So when I run across something, hey, this is a good idea about one of these unsolved mysteries. Let me tell you about it. They're just like, whatever, I don't care. And then in these alternative history books, I'll come across something that really go from one good idea, and then it'll lead into something that isn't really a mystery, but the person who has either written the book or doing the has created this mystery without even giving all the facts, or I don't even know if they all know all the facts. A lot of confetti around. But, I give them the benefit of the doubt, but there's nobody to bounce this off of. It's like, for example, I run across, if you've seen, everybody's seen the hieroglyphs at Abydos that look like a UFO and an Apache helicopter and a submarine, and they say this is evidence of UFOs and whatnot. And immediately I go, well, this person can't read hieroglyphs, because if you could, you'd know what was going on. It's actually not a mystery. But then it gets me, well, these things get repeated in other books, and much like academics do, they tend to cite their own peers and trusted sources. So there's nobody to talk to about this, nothing going on. And then more and more lately, these people got bigger voices. They end up getting on these huge platforms, and then they'll talk about things that, and really just narrowly only present what they want you to hear without the entire picture. And of course, that would frustrate me, and nobody to talk to about it. And as it turns out, there aren't a whole lot of voices. There are a couple that will kind of talk about, hey, this isn't a mystery or whatnot, but not a lot of Egyptologists going on these huge platforms. So what I figured I'd do, and of course my family goes, you really should find some people to talk to about this. So I joined some Facebook groups, which is not exactly the best place. And I'll tell you a little story about that, because it's going to be relevant later. That didn't work out. So I figured, well, I'm self-employed now. I've got some time, and anybody can have a YouTube channel. So I might as well just talk to myself and film it and put it out there. That way, somebody's searching for something, or they're really interested, maybe they can come across my stuff and whatever information I think of to present, and say, okay. And at least give them food for thought, instead of buying either side hook, line, and sinker. Because even, still have the problem, because I'll read books by Egyptologists and figure out that they're completely wrong about something. Of course, nobody's here to talk about. For example, using the diorite balls at the Aswan quarry to cut granite out, and the Egyptologists say, oh, they banged on it with these diorite balls because it's stronger than granite. And to this day, you can go to Aswan and they'll let you bang on granite with diorite ball and say, isn't this horrible? Doesn't this suck? Can you imagine doing that? And you're like, no, because this is stupid. And the Egyptians weren't stupid. So there you go. Nobody to discuss it with. So I decided to do a YouTube channel with the impending consequences, if you will, be that what they may, because I really don't care. This isn't my livelihood. I'm not doing this to be famous or to make an assload of money. There are people that do that, are very good at that. So if you're looking for great production value and music and neat graphics, you will not find that here, because I barely know how to use editing software or even how to make this live thing work. But I'm doing my best, and I'm still learning. And those of you who've seen the latest may go back in time and watch earlier videos and notice that I suck even more than I do now. It's a process. I got to learn how to do it. And one of those things is maybe learning how to explain things or present things in a way that isn't completely boring. Because you talk to some Egyptologists and it is. So, like I said, there's not a whole lot of voices out there. There's a few really good ones, but they don't get a whole lot of attention. Excuse me. None of them show up on Joe Rogan. I guess they're not big enough. And of course, the Egyptologists don't. And I've thought about this, because as this goes on, there of course is a huge conflict between these people. I don't know who started it, but I know why it's going on, actually. At least, let me just say I have a really good idea. And I thought I'd go ahead and explain it. Because, when the Joe Rogan happened with Zahi Hawass, I was like, an actual Egyptologist. Now, I knew what was going to happen. It ended up being a little worse than I thought, just because when you consume Egyptology for over 40 years, a lot of it is Zahi Hawass. And that's the way he is. It's very hard to talk to, very hard to listen to. Reading it isn't that bad. But, there's plenty of other ones. And I'm wondering why none of them don't show up. And I had to sit there and think about that. And I think I know why. So the best way to explain this, I guess, we'll start with if you want to be an Egyptologist. So we have to look at what people have to go through if they want to do this. Because at one point I wanted to do this. And almost to this day, I'm kind of glad that it didn't happen that way, because it allows me to think a little more broad than if I had gone through the training process. But the thing about Egyptology, or even archaeology, is it's not really a career that you can make an enormously wonderful living doing. Okay. You end up paying a lot of money trying to get into the really good schools. And at the end, there's not a whole lot of really great jobs. A lot of them better be satisfied being public school history teachers, because as it turns out, tenured professors and museum curators, blah, 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 they don't give up their jobs until they pass away. And, to make it any other way, you're going to have to write books and become known, or at least get on excavation. So you start this process. You go to really good school. You got to get your degrees. You got to suffer through boring ass lectures, write research papers, listen to your professor's opinions, try and get on excavations, which a lot of times is at your dime. You're not usually getting paid to go out into the middle of desert, sit in the sand, going millimeter by millimeter with dental tools to pick out artifacts and decode hieroglyphs, make your analysis and everything. And as you're going through, then you go back, you get known, you want to get your PhD. Eventually, you're going to have to propose an excavation, go beg for money, get people on the team, go out there and sit there again with dental tools, going through, cataloging everything you find, photographing everything, drawing everything, decoding all the inscriptions, making the analysis of the pottery, the bones, the inscriptions, all this to really put together what happened at wherever you're at, what's going on, what did they do, more knowledge did we gain about these people. And then you go and you publish it, you suffer the peer review, maybe you write a book, and then you're known and you make the rounds. And then what happens is, imagine you go through all that. It's your life's work. And somebody on the other side of the planet is sitting in front of a computer writing a book because they believe that there's no way that the Egyptians built the pyramids. It had to be aliens. Okay. So they're going through trying to find whatever they can to support this argument. And they get that Egyptologist's work, life's work, published work. They take a look at it and they go, well, that's a lie. Okay. Here's what really happened. And then they'll write that in a book. Egyptologists are hiding something. The Egyptian government's hiding something. They're lying to us. The evidence has to be available. And the government hides it in a vault that's only accessible through Zahi Hawass's bathroom. It gets published. And of course, it's interesting reading. It gets passed around. They get media tours. They go on shows. They get on these huge platforms and say exactly that. Well, the reason why I don't have concrete evidence is because it's already been found, but they're lying and hiding it under the ground in a vault. Okay. Well, now what happens when somebody asks an Egyptologist about this, or these two get in the same room? Well, This is why I said Dr. Hawass doesn't care. He doesn't read this stuff, and he doesn't devote gray matter to it, although he should just for debate's purpose. But then again, as somebody pointed out in the comments, why should he? And exactly why? These people have literally called him and other Egyptologists liars, criminals, more or less, being corrupt, without even speaking to him. So they're not even going to engage. Well, this also goes both ways and creates problems for the alternative researchers, because there's a lot of them. Well, if somebody's out there doing research, well, now they're going to go talk to Egyptologists and immediately be dismissed. I ask about that. No. I'm not telling you anything. And then the name called. Well, now people think there is a conspiracy. Well, they won't tell me anything. I don't know. I would say I don't think anything's being hidden like that, in Egypt at least, but I can't sit here and definitively say for sure that nothing's being hidden. But what I can tell you for a fact is the Egyptian government does censor certain things. But the weird part is when, even though they censor it, they don't hide the evidence. And I'll give you a prime example. So Manfred Bitek is an archaeologist, and for years, he spent years excavating the city of Avaris up in the Delta. It's in northern Egypt. And if you don't know what Avaris is, it's the capital city of the Hyksos. And the Hyksos actually ruled Egypt for about 150 years, and then they were expelled early in history, like at the end of the Old Kingdom. And if you read history books or see anything about it, you might see that nobody's exactly sure who the Hyksos were. They kind of know where they came from, but they don't know who they were. And if you look at Dr. Bitek's work, you'll see the evidence shows actually a clear connection to a Bible story. Now, including royal seals with names of people from the Bible. I saw an interview on a documentary. It was the person interviewing him was Canadian journalist Simka Jakubowicz. And they had this interview at Avaris, and in the room with them was a representative of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, and he was armed, watching this conversation very carefully. And Simka asked him about the things found at Avaris, and he showed Simka on camera these royal seals. And he said the name, and he says, "Why, this is a puzzle. This doesn't make any sense." Why did he do that? When you're working in Egypt, there is one thing you never, ever, 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 never do. And that is, no matter what evidence you uncover, no matter what, you will never draw the conclusion in your published work or state publicly anything that indicates that Egypt was ruled by Jews at any point in the history of the universe. But they don't hide the evidence. So here's how it goes. You can read Bitek's work. He doesn't make the connections or the conclusions. He kind of alludes to it a little, but never actually outright says it. You can go see the royal seals and read them. And on the back of the seals, it clearly says Yaakov Per. And while you're there reading the seals, what you can't do is say Yaakov Per, that's House of Jacob. That means these seals belong to... This is a mystery, my friend. I'm sure you're enjoying doing your research trip in Egypt. Shame that was cut short, or that you were never allowed to come back. So you go, oh yeah, that's a mystery. So that's literally what they censor. And that's because of them. So I have no problem with aliens doing things in Egypt as long as they're not Jewish. I don't know if they're covering it up. I don't think so. I think they would announce that to the world because their primary driver is tourism. Okay. And if they found an alien spacecraft under the Giza Plateau, by golly, you'd pay money to go see it. I know I would. But that's neither here nor there. So now we have this situation where alternative researchers get a whole lot of press, mega platforming, tell their interesting stories. They put forth some good ideas, and occasionally just flat out tell you stuff that isn't true. And nobody calls them out on it. Why? Because when you do, it's the end of the world. And this is because of the way they get treated by mainstream. Now, so you have a couple people who've announced to the world that archaeologists, especially Egyptologists, Dr. Hawass, and the Egyptian government are lying and corrupt. And they've had their work completely dismissed. So, hey, we got that high school feud. They're not going to give alternative researchers, alternative theories, nothing, the time of day. And they will call them names, as has happened, and call them pseudo-archaeologists. And you shouldn't listen to them. They're crazy. So on the other hand, what does that cause? That causes the alternative researchers to do the same thing back and just cry louder about how there's a conspiracy to hide everything. And that creates problems for the rest of us who are genuinely curious. So if I'm talking to an Egyptologist and asking him questions about the pyramid, and then all of a sudden I say, hey, what about the Sphinx being older than Khafre's pyramid? Oh man, it's the end of the world. What are you, one of them so archaeologists following one of those crazy people, and it's 4,500 years old. They have the wind science to prove it. It doesn't matter what you say to them. They don't care because the damage has already been done. And meanwhile, getting back to what happened to me in a Facebook group, if I say the wrong thing in a Facebook group, talk about getting attacked, even if it's something innocuous. And I actually ran across, didn't know somebody was lurking at Facebook group who is actually an alternative researcher. And I'm not going to tell you who it was. 1 million subscribers, I'll tell you who it was. But he's known. Not quite a big one, but you'd know who it was. And I'll tell you what I said in the group. They were talking about the Sphinx. And somehow somebody asked the question of, I don't understand why our Egyptologists think the pyramids aren't as old as the Sphinx. And I said, here's the deal. Generally, everything's done on context. And I said, both sides are doing it. So Egyptologists say, here's the pyramids. We know they were built about 4,500 BC. And here's the Sphinx. Well, by golly, it was probably constructed in 4,500 BC. One big context. And I said, then you have alternative researchers who go up to, who kind of agree on 10,500 BC. Some of them say 1 million years, whatever. And they have a legit scientist to talk about the water erosion. And they say, well, if the Sphinx is 10,500 years old, by context, the pyramids have to be that old. I said, well, in reality, we're talking about two completely different things. And that's all I said. And oh my God, this guy ripped me over that one thing, because I happen to subscribe to the fact that Khufu built that pyramid, it doesn't matter. I disagreed with him about one thing, and he actually swore at me and questioned some of my credentials, including professors I've learned from. And when I finally figured out I decided not to be nice, and I called him out on something, he stopped. But here's the deal. From the word go, there was no civil conversation with him. And that's the problem. Everybody is extremely defensive of their work, and nobody wants to have a civil conversation. So if I was able to sit down with Graham Hancock, and I'd love to, I could talk to that man for a day or two. I'd love to have him on here, for a live show. And about half an hour before, we both rip some Maui Wowie, and I do a High on Egyptology series. And there's only a couple things in Egypt I really disagree with him on. But if I talk to him about that, having seen him on it, even though he's a little more of the level-headed guy, he would still come after me. He would take it personally. And I don't know. I want to talk to these guys. And, when they talk about the pyramid, they'll tell you how all this precision and its alignment and everything. And truth is, it's not that precise. People picture in their mind that every stone in that pyramid is exactly precision cut and fit and exactly where. That's not true. The core of the pyramid, it looks like they just went, make it about yay big and throw it up there. And a lot of it could be rubble. The precision stonework is only where people see it, the outer casing, passageways. And as far as the alignment, they told us how they aligned it. They documented more than once how they aligned their monuments. It's not a mystery. It's called the stretching of the cord. Look it up. You can see the temple walls. They had a whole god devoted to it, and they did it celestially. And literally, you can get it pretty damn close, which is all it is. But these people don't want to hear that. They want it to be something else, even though it's documented. They told us how they did it. You can't tell them. And I often wonder, there's a lot of information surrounding something that isn't being presented. So the vast majority of people who really all they know about Egypt is what they had to know to pass the test to get out of high school will accept anything you tell them as long as it's with authority. But if you don't tell somebody everything, they completely misunderstand what they're looking at. And then again, Egyptologists do the same thing. Like with the stone balls. I know what it is. I made a video about it. I mean, I've worked with stone before. I looked at it. The scoop marks, I know exactly what that is. They're telling you they pounded it with a stone. Well, if you really think about it, or if you've worked with stone, if you want to get a piece of granite that you need to be a certain size, the last thing you want to do is sit there and bang on it with a heavy object, because it's full of little fractures. You bang it the wrong place, you'll fracture the whole stone. You got to start all over again. It's just a stupid way to do it. And it's not efficient. But you see the giant scoop marks, you have these diorite balls. Well, diorite being harder than granite, it's actually like rubbing it with sandpaper. So they're actually grinding the granite with the diorite balls. And if you look at the balls, it's got like flat spots on them where they were doing this. And you can see those scoop marks. By grinding it, it's more efficient, and you can control how far so you can keep that. You don't run any risks of fracturing it. I don't know how big of a pain in the booty it is, but it's definitely better. You look at modern stone saws, that's all they are, is grinders. You use something harder on another wheel and grind it. Now, I also, in the video, talked about them having the technology to make stone saws. I'm not going to get into that here. But as far as, the complete right angles and everything, I'll tell you the truth. You got me there. The boxes, I don't know how they did that. No clue. Haven't heard a good, at least not one from Egyptology that makes any sense. Maybe someday somebody will. So anyway, that's really all I'm doing. I just wanted to celebrate, say hi to all these 100 people. If you watch this later and you still want to ask a question, why, please drop it in the comments. One day, this is what I want to do, is just have scheduled live stuff and allow anybody who wants to participate, either ask questions, yell at me, or whatever. Everybody's welcome. I don't care if you a hardcore mainstream Egyptologist or a hardcore aliens did it. Doesn't matter. I love all of you. Everybody's interesting. They've all got interesting stuff to say. Just be respectful. But that's it. And I knew this would happen. Nobody would show up for the live version of the live stream, and that's okay. If you're watching this afterwards, thanks for watching. Let me know. Also, if there's anything you want to talk about, or you want me to talk about, drop it in the comments. Say, hey, can you cover this subject or whatever. Also, I'm thinking about, I do like the Paranormal 2. And I made that video about being done with Ghost Adventures, but I thought about going ahead to watch another episode just to take a break from the Zahi Hawass deal and do one of those, give you my thoughts on that episode. It might be funny. Well, thanks for watching tonight. I'll see everybody next time. Thanks. Bye.